For millions of years, the Valkyrie dominated the galaxy. Silent, efficient, ruthless. Their exoskeletons could withstand direct plasma fire, their claws could tear through reinforced hull plating like paper, and their hunting instincts had been honed across 1,000 worlds. They were apex predators on an interstellar scale, leaving nothing but barren planets in their wake. That is, until they encountered a species from a small blue world at the edge of the Orion Arm. Us, humans. The first contact was a massacre. The colony on Proxima Centauri lost 80% of its population in a single night. The survivors spoke of shadows moving faster than the eye could track, of creatures that seemed to materialize from darkness itself. The Valkyrie didn't just kill. They hunted for sport, for the thrill of the chase. They collected trophies. "They see us like we see deer," explained Commander Chen during the Emergency Council broadcast. But they've never hunted prey that hunts back. History has a pattern when it comes to humanity. We adapt. We survive. We overcome. And sometimes, we become the very thing our enemies fear. The Defense Council authorized Project Predator within hours of the Proxima attack. They recruited hunters, trackers, special forces operators, anyone who understood the psychology of pursuit and ambush. While the galaxy's greatest scientific minds worked to develop weapons that could pierce Valkyrie armor, these men and women studied everything we knew about our new enemy. Their biology makes them perfect killers, Dr. Rivera told the first group of volunteers. But biology isn't everything. They've relied on instinct for too long. They've forgotten what it's like to be afraid. The training facility on Luna became a simulation of Valkyrie hunting grounds. Recruits learned to move silently in complete darkness, to mask their heat signatures, to set traps that could immobilize creatures 3 times their strength. They studied Valkyrie communication patterns and hunting behaviors from recovered footage. They learned to think like the enemy. 6 months after Proxima, the Valkyrie struck again. This time, they hit the research outpost on Europa. But something was different. When the dust settled, 3 Valkyrie lay dead. Their bodies showed signs of calculated precision, wounded first to slow them down, then finished with methodical efficiency. Security footage caught glimpses of human figures moving with unnatural discipline, utilizing the environment against creatures that had evolved to be perfect killers. The hunters had become the hunted. "We've only just begun," Captain Zhao transmitted from Europa, standing over the massive corpse of a Valkyrie Alpha. "They think they're apex predators because they've never met anything like us before. Across settled space, humanity prepared. We didn't build just weapons. We built a new kind of warrior. People who could outthink the galaxy's most efficient killers." The Valkyrie had spent millennia evolving into perfect hunters, but humans had spent their entire history learning to overcome superior predators. Now, as our scout ships detect a massive Valkyrie fleet approaching the Sol system, humanity stands ready for the ultimate test. The deadliest species in the galaxy is coming to exterminate us. They don't realize they're sailing into a trap. The first warning came from the outer sensor arrays near Pluto. Massive ships, moving in formation with the disciplined precision that had made the Valkyrie infamous throughout the galaxy. Earth's defense systems went on high alert, but there was no panic in the command centers. This was exactly what we have been waiting for. They're following the same hunting pattern they used at Proxima and Europa, Lieutenant Anaya noted, her eyes never leaving the holographic display. After losing her brother in the Proxima massacre, she had become one of Project Predator's most dedicated tacticians. They'll split into 3 hunting packs, looking to surround and isolate before going in for the kill. The plan had been in motion for months. While the public faced emergency drills and evacuation protocols, a select group of officers had been orchestrating what would become humanity's most audacious gambit. The colonies on Mars and Venus had been partially evacuated, not out of fear, but strategy. We were creating bait. The Valkyrie evolved on a world with multiple moons and constant meteor bombardment, Dr. Rivera explained during the final briefing. Their eyes can detect movement better than any species we've encountered, but they have trouble distinguishing between decoys and living prey when both generate heat signatures. This insight had led to Operation Phantom. Thousands of heat-emitting drones designed to mimic human settlement patterns scattered across the inner planets. The Valkyrie would detect what looked like disorganized human colonies, ripe for harvesting. Meanwhile, Earth's true defense force waited in the shadows. Deep space habitats, retrofitted with stealth technology, had been positioned along the Valkyrie's most likely approach vectors. Inside each sat teams of Project Predator's finest, men and women who had spent every waking moment preparing for this confrontation. "Remember your training," Captain Joe's voice came through the comm link to all teams. "They're stronger, faster, and tougher than we are. But they've never had to evolve beyond their physical advantages. We have." The first Valkyrie scout ships approached Mars exactly as predicted. They moved with confidence, clearly expecting another easy hunt. The trap was set. "Don't engage until they commit fully to the surface," Commander Chen ordered. "Let them think they're the ones in control." On Earth, millions watched the live tactical feed with bated breath. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about proving that humanity deserved its place among the stars. That we weren't just clever primates who had stumbled into space, but a force to be reckoned with. The main Valkyrie fleet held position near the asteroid belt, while hunting parties descended toward Mars and Venus. Their ships were biological marvels, part grown, part built, with outer hulls that could adapt to different environments. They were beautiful in their deadly efficiency, like everything about the Valkyrie. "They're taking the bait," Lieutenant Anaya confirmed as the first hunting party landed on Mars' surface. "Time to show them what happens when you corner a species that spent its entire existence learning to overcome predators." The Valkyrie hunters emerged from their ships, towering figures with iridescent exoskeletons that shimmered under the Martian sun. They moved with a predator's grace, following the heat signatures toward what they believed were human settlements. Their mandibles clicked in anticipation of the hunt. They never saw the first shot coming. From concealed positions in the Martian landscape, specialized sniper teams targeted the lead hunters. The new weapons, accelerated particle rifles developed specifically to penetrate Valkyrie armor, fired with barely a sound. 3 hunters fell before the others realized they were under attack. For the first time in recorded history, the galaxy heard something extraordinary over the intercepted Valkyrie communication channels. The sound of fear. The Valkyrie weren't accustomed to retreating. Their confused withdrawal from the Martian surface was chaotic, a far cry from their usually coordinated movements. Back on their command ship, the Valkyrie war leader Kivrex summoned his huntmasters, mandibles clicking with barely contained rage. "These prey fight differently," rumbled the eldest huntmaster, his exoskeleton bearing the scars of 1,000 successful hunts across the galaxy. "They knew we were coming. They prepared." Meanwhile, on the hidden orbital platform Alpha, Commander Chen reviewed the footage from the first engagement. The specialized strike teams had performed better than expected, but this was just the beginning. The Valkyrie wouldn't underestimate humans twice. "They'll adapt quickly," she told the gathered officers. "That's what apex predators do. We need to stay 3 steps ahead." Beneath the surface of Europa, in a research facility carved into the ice, Dr. Rivera and her team worked frantically to decode more of the Valkyrie biology. The specimens recovered from previous encounters had provided invaluable insights, but time was running short. Their neural structure suggests a hive-like communication system, she explained over a secure channel to Earth Command. "Not quite a hive mind, but something close. They share sensory information when in proximity to each other. That's how they coordinate their hunts so effectively." This revelation changed everything. If the Valkyrie could share what they learned, then each encounter made them more dangerous. The tactical advantage humans had gained through surprise was already eroding. On Venus, the second Valkyrie hunting party proceeded with newfound caution. They moved in tighter formations, scanning continuously for hidden threats. They'd learned from their brethren's experience on Mars. Lieutenant Anaya watched their approach through thermal imaging. They're adapting, just as we predicted. Time for Phase 2. Instead of the ambush the Vrikari were expecting, they found abandoned settlements. Real ones this time, evacuated hours earlier. Heat signatures fading, as if the humans had fled in panic. The hunters spread out, following the apparent trail of retreating prey. Captain Joe's voice came through the secure channel. Remember, in nature, predators follow familiar patterns. When something works, they keep doing it. Let's use that against them. The trap had been carefully constructed. As the Vrikari followed the fake evacuation routes, they were being drawn toward the mining complexes, a labyrinth of tunnels where their superior speed and strength would be neutralized, where human ingenuity could level the playing field. Back on Earth, the situation grew tense. Despite the initial success, the Vrikari main fleet remained in the asteroid belt, unmoving. Intelligence suggested they were calling for reinforcements. We need to draw them into full engagement before their numbers increase. General Hayes insisted during the emergency council meeting. If we give them time to bring in their full armada, even our best preparations may not be enough. Not everyone agreed. Some council members argued for a diplomatic approach. Perhaps the Vrikari could be reasoned with. Others suggested a full retreat, abandoning the outer colonies to save Earth. That's exactly what they expect, Lieutenant Anaya countered. They've hunted species to extinction before. They don't stop. They don't negotiate. And they'll follow us wherever we go. On Venus, the trap was sprung. As the Vrikari hunters entered the mining complex, the human teams sealed the entrances. In the narrow tunnels, specialized combat units engaged the aliens with newly developed sonic weapons that exploited a weakness Dr. Rivera had discovered: the Vrikari's sensitivity to certain frequencies. For the first time, the hunters experienced genuine confusion. Their shared sensory network became a liability as pain and disorientation echoed between them. The human teams, wearing protective gear, pressed their advantage. Yet victory came at a cost. The Vrikari fought with desperate ferocity when cornered. Several human squads were lost entirely, their final transmissions testifying to the aliens' terrible strength even when disadvantaged. Command received one last message from the Venus team leader before communication was lost. They're learning from every encounter, changing tactics mid-battle. But so are we. Aboard the Vrikari command ship, war leader Kvrex made an unprecedented decision. In all their history of conquest, the Vrikari had never considered a species worth their direct attention. They hunted, they harvested, they moved on. But these humans were different, dangerous in a way no prey had ever been before. For the first time, the Vrikari would commit their full might to a single target. The entire fleet began moving toward Earth. And deep within the war leader's chamber, something even more troubling. Kvrex had ordered the awakening of the apex hunters. Evolutionary throwbacks kept in stasis, monstrous even by Vrikari standards. Creatures so savage and uncontrollable, they were deployed only in the most desperate circumstances. As Earth's defenses prepared for the coming storm, no one suspected that the true nightmare was just beginning. Earth's orbital defense platforms hummed with activity as the Vrikari fleet approached. Civilian evacuations to underground shelters continued around the clock, the streets of major cities eerily empty as humanity prepared for the coming storm. In the 6 days since the initial engagements on Mars and Venus, both sides had been calculating their next moves carefully. Their holding position just beyond lunar orbit, Lieutenant Anaya reported, dark circles under her eyes betraying her lack of sleep. Standard hunting formation, but on a scale we haven't seen before. The tactical display showed over 200 Vrikari vessels arranged in a three-dimensional net designed to catch any fleeing ships. Their biomechanical hulls pulse with an ominous rhythm, almost like a heartbeat. They're being cautious, Commander Chen noted. After Venus, they know we can hurt them. The losses on Venus had been severe, nearly 60% of the deployed forces, but they had eliminated an entire Valkyrie hunting party. The data gathered from those encounters had proven invaluable, allowing Dr. Rivera's team to make crucial breakthroughs. At the research facility on Europa, Dr. Rivera examined the latest results with growing excitement. "We've isolated the frequency range their neural network operates on," she explained to the gathered scientists. "Their shared consciousness has specific limitations if we broadcast on these frequencies." Her words were cut short as the facility's alarms blared. On the security feeds, massive shapes moved with impossible speed through the corridors. Somehow, a group of Valkyrie had infiltrated the moon base. "They're different," one security officer whispered, horror evident in his voice. These weren't the same hunters they'd encountered before. They were larger, with primitive-looking but more heavily armored exoskeletons. The apex hunters had arrived. Dr. Rivera barely had time to transmit her findings before the laboratory doors buckled under tremendous force. Her last message was simple: use frequency 142.6. It's their weakness. Back on Earth, Captain Zhao received the transmission moments before Europa went dark. His hand tightened on the edge of the console. Dr. Rivera had been his mentor. Her loss cut deep. But there was no time for mourning. The information she'd sacrificed herself to send might be the key to humanity's survival. "Get this to every combat unit immediately," he ordered, "and prep the atmospheric resonators." The resonators had been a contingency plan. Massive towers constructed in remote locations, capable of broadcasting specific frequencies across vast areas. Originally designed for weather modification, they would now serve as weapons. War leader Kavrex watched Earth from his command ship, mandibles clicking in anticipation. Unlike the other worlds the Valkyrie had conquered, this small blue planet presented a genuine challenge. It awakened something primal in him, the thrill of a worthy hunt. "The apex hunters have secured the moon base," his subordinate reported. "All resistance eliminated." Kavrex rumbled with satisfaction. "And the human research facility?" "Destroyed, war leader." But there was a transmission before destruction. This news disturbed the war leader. These humans were persistent in their defiance, clever in ways that concerned him. Throughout the galaxy, prey species fled or fought blindly when cornered. These humans studied their predators, adapted, and improvised. "Begin the final approach," Kavrex ordered. "No more games. We will descend in force." The Valkyrie fleet began its advance toward Earth, bioweapons powering up. Their ships released clouds of smaller hunting craft, thousands of them darkening Earth's orbit like a swarm of insects. In the command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, General Hayes watched the approach with grim determination. "They're coming in exactly as the simulations predicted. All units prepare to execute Operation Thunderclap." Operation Thunderclap represented humanity's most audacious gambit, a coordinated counterattack utilizing every weapon and tactical advantage they had developed. The atmospheric resonators, particle beam weapons, and a surprise that had been months in the making. Lieutenant Anaya took her place at the tactical station. "The thing about predators," she said quietly, "is they never expect their prey to set the terms of engagement." The first wave of Valkyrie hunting craft entered Earth's atmosphere, their hulls glowing red-hot during descent. They targeted major population centers, expecting to find humans hiding in fear. Instead, they found empty cities and activated resonators broadcasting at precisely 142.6 mph. The effect was immediate. The smaller craft began to falter, their pilots disoriented by the frequency that disrupted their neural network. Some crashed into buildings or mountainsides, while others drifted aimlessly. But the larger ships, carrying the apex hunters, continued their descent unaffected. These ancient throwbacks operated independently, without the shared consciousness that made modern Valkyrie such effective pack hunters. They were coming, and the resonators couldn't stop them. "They've adapted again," Commander Chen observed grimly. "The frequency isn't working on all of them." Captain Zhao nodded. "Then we move to Phase 2. Across the globe, hidden installations powered up. What the Valkyrie couldn't know was that humanity had been preparing for this moment ever since the first attack on Proxima Centauri. Special teams emerged from concealment. Men and women who had undergone experimental procedures based on recovered Valkyrie technology. Project Chimera. The program deemed too dangerous, too ethically questionable to be publicly acknowledged. Human warriors enhanced with adapted Valkyrie biology. The ultimate answer to the ultimate predators. As the apex hunters began landing on Earth's surface, they found themselves greeted not by helpless prey, but by something entirely unexpected. Humans who could match their speed, strength, and hunting instincts. The lines between predator and prey were about to blur in ways the galaxy had never witnessed. War leader Kivrex sensed something was wrong when the first apex hunter squads went silent. By the time he realized the full extent of humanity's preparations, the trap was already closing around his fleet. In high orbit, camouflaged platforms suddenly powered up, revealing the massive ion cannons they housed. And as dawn broke over North America, the war leader received an impossible transmission, a direct challenge from a human voice. "This is Captain Zhao of Earth Defense. For too long, you've hunted species across the galaxy who couldn't fight back. Today that ends. Today, you learn what happens when you corner a species that spent its entire existence overcoming stronger predators. Today, you'll discover that humans aren't just prey. We're the deadliest hunters the galaxy has ever known." The skies above Earth crackled with energy as the ion cannons fired in synchronized volleys. Brilliant blue beams cut through space, connecting with the outer ranks of the Valkyrie fleet. Several of the biomechanical ships ruptured instantly, spilling their innards into the vacuum. But the larger vessels, those housing the war leader and his elite, deployed reactive shields that absorbed much of the impact. First wave effectiveness at 60%, a technician called out in the command center. "They're adapting to the energy signature." Commander Chen nodded grimly. They had anticipated this. The Valkyrie didn't dominate the galaxy by being predictable. Switch to alternating frequencies. Don't give them time to calibrate. On the ground, the situation was growing dire. The apex hunters had made landfall on all continents, focusing on strategic military installations and population centers. These ancient Valkyrie were even more terrifying in person than the footage had suggested. Standing nearly 3 meters tall, with reinforced exoskeletons and primitive but devastatingly effective bioweapons, they'd moved with a savage grace that their modern counterparts lacked. Lieutenant Anaya received the battlefield reports with increasing concern. Regular forces are sustaining heavy casualties in direct engagement. The Chimera units are holding their own, but they're outnumbered. The Chimera squads, humans enhanced with adapted Valkyrie biology, were humanity's most closely guarded secret and final defense. Only 500 had survived the experimental procedures, their bodies forever changed by the alien DNA grafted into their cellular structure. They were faster, stronger, and possessed heightened senses that allowed them to track the apex hunters on equal terms. In the ruins of what had once been downtown Sydney, Chimera Squad Delta engaged with a group of apex hunters. Their leader, former Special Forces operator Tom Reynolds, moved with inhuman speed as he ducked under the swing of a Valkyrie claw. The enhancements had changed his eyes. They now reflected light like a cat's, but they had also given him the ability to see in near total darkness. "They're not fighting as a coordinated unit," he reported through his neural link. "Each one operates independently, different from the regular hunters." This information raced back to command, where Captain Zhao quickly reassessed their strategy. The apex hunters don't share the neural network. That's why the resonators didn't affect them. "We need to change tactics." Across the battlefield, the human defenders began to adapt. Regular military units switched to asymmetric warfare, using the environment and prepared traps rather than engaging directly. The Chimera teams focused on isolating individual apex hunters, exploiting the lack of coordination that made modern Valkyrie so effective. War leader Kivrex watched the battle unfold from his command ship, mandibles clicking in agitation. These humans were not behaving like prey should. Instead of scattering in terror, they were executing coordinated defensive maneuvers that spoke of extensive preparation. Even more disturbing were the reports of humans moving with almost Valkyrie-like abilities. Impossible, he hissed when his sub-commander suggested the humans had somehow stolen Valkyrie biological advantages. Yet the evidence was becoming difficult to ignore. The apex hunters are reporting heavy resistance, his sub-commander continued. They request permission to deploy biotoxins. The war leader hesitated. Biotoxins would destroy not just the human defenders, but render the planet uninhabitable for harvesting. It would be an admission of failure, something no war leader had faced in 10,000 cycles of conquest. No, Kivrex decided. Prepare my personal hunting craft. I will lead the final assault myself. In the command center, alarms blared as sensors detected a new development. Massive energy signature departing the Valkyrie command ship, a technician announced. Trajectory suggests direct approach to our location. Lieutenant Anaya studied the readings, her enhanced eyes widening. It's him. The war leader is coming personally. This was unprecedented. In all recorded history, no species had ever forced a Valkyrie war leader to enter battle directly. It represented both the greatest danger and the greatest opportunity. Captain Zhou's expression remained calm, but those who knew him well could see the intensity in his eyes. Alert all Chimera units. Converge on these coordinates. It's time for Operation Guillotine. Operation Guillotine had always been considered a contingency too unlikely to ever be implemented. A plan based on the remote possibility of drawing out the Valkyrie leadership. Now, it was their best hope. The war leader's craft descended through Earth's atmosphere like a meteor, its biomechanical hull adapting to the friction and heat. Inside, Kivrex prepared for battle, donning ancestral armor that had been worn by war leaders for countless generations. The armor was alive in its own way, bonding with his exoskeleton, enhancing his already formidable physical abilities. These humans will learn the natural order, he growled to his honor guard. Today we remind the galaxy why the Valkyrie are feared. The craft landed in the decimated remains of what had once been the Pentagon. The structure had been evacuated days earlier, its personnel relocated to the underground command center in the Rockies. What the war leader couldn't know was that the building had been prepared specifically for this moment. As Kivrex and his guard emerged from their craft, they found themselves in an eerie silence. No defenders, no resistance, just the wind whistling through the damaged building. The war leader's senses tingled with warning. This was not the chaos of a species fighting for survival. This was something else. In the command center, Commander Chen watched through hidden cameras as the Valkyrie leader surveyed the area. All units hold position, she ordered. Wait for the signal. The trap had been meticulously prepared. The entire building had been reinforced and modified, turned into an elaborate killing ground designed specifically for Valkyrie biology. Specialized projectors could broadcast the neural-disrupting frequency at intensities that would overload even the war leader's sensory system. Hidden compartments house weapons specifically designed to penetrate the ancestral armor worn by Valkyrie leadership. Captain Zhou took a deep breath. Everything had led to this moment. Lieutenant Anaya, you have command here. I'm going in. Before anyone could object, he locked his combat exoframe, a technological marvel developed from studying Valkyrie physiology. Not as organic as the Chimera enhancements, but offering similar advantages through different means. Sir, that's not the plan, Lieutenant Anaya protested. The Chimera teams are in position to. The plan changed when he brought his honor guard. Zhao interrupted. We need to separate him from his protection. And for that, we need bait he can't resist. Understanding dawned in Anaya's eyes. A direct challenge. Zhao nodded. In all our studies of their culture, one thing remained consistent. The Valkyrie respect strength and cunning. Their leaders maintained position through dominance. As war leader Kivrex ventured deeper into the Pentagon's remains, his senses on high alert, a single human figure appeared in the central courtyard, standing alone, unarmed except for a small communication device. War leader Kivrex. Captain Zhou's voice echoed across the ruins. I am Captain Zhou of Earth Defense. You have hunted my species, killed our people. Now I offer you what your kind truly desires, a hunt worthy of your status. The war leader's compound eyes focused on the solitary human. Was this a trick, or was this prey actually challenging him directly? You believe yourself worthy to face me, human. Kivrex's voice rumbled like distant thunder. Countless species have fallen before the Frikari. Your defiance is meaningless. Captain Zhou stood his ground, despite every instinct screaming at him to flee from the towering predator. And yet here you are, forced to dirty your claws with combat. Tell me, war leader, when was the last time prey fought back so effectively that you had to intervene personally? The war leader's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of agitation that human xenobiologists had identified as the Frikari equivalent of anger. You are clever for prey, but cleverness will not save you. Perhaps not, Zhao agreed. But I'm not trying to save myself. I'm trying to save my species. He activated his exoframe, the technology humming to life around him. And to do that, I only need to keep you occupied for exactly 3 more minutes. The war leader sensed the trap closing but found himself unable to resist the challenge. With a roar that shook the remaining windows, he charged forward, honor guard following in his wake. And deep below the surface, Lieutenant Anaya watched the countdown timer on Operation Guillotine tick toward 0.